And welcome to David Joshua Ford, episode 101, getting started with Bitfocus Companion in 2025. It's been a while since I've done a sort of basic overview of Companion, so today we're going to go over that and what you can expect in terms of downloading and installing the application, what your network setup might look like, and then going through the Companion user interface of how to use it. If you're not familiar with Companion, it is a fantastic way to control not only live productions, but live streams. I'm using it right now to automate this whole show. And I just wanted to spend today going over the basics of what the application is and how you can get started with that. If you go to davidjoshuaford.com on my website, there is a free profile that you can download, and we'll be using that to install and to use that as a template to get you started and working our way through it. If you are new to the channel, we talk about live streaming, video production, photography, all that kind of stuff. So if you have any questions around that, do let me know. And as we go through, drop your questions in the comments. And once I've sort of shown the presentation of how to run Companion in 2025, we'll answer questions and that kind of stuff in the end. But do feel free to chat as we go along. All right, let's kick off and talk about how we're going to download and install Bitfocus Companion. I've put the link there that you can follow, and we're going to take a look at what applications are available and what you might need or might not need. So the first thing that we want to do is take a look at Companion, which is the stable version 3.5.2. So if you jump over to bitfocus.io in the downloads section, these are the applications available here. You've got your stable column and then your beta column and then the experimental. For the most part, with what we're doing, we're just going to look at the stable versions. If you do want to get ahead of and see what's coming down the pipeline, then there are options for that. But at the moment, we just want to grab Companion 3.5.2, and that we can see it's available here for Linux, Mac, Apple Silicon, as well as Mac Intel. So make sure you grab the right version depending on what type of Mac you're running, and then also for Windows. So you click on that and then click on it to download. Also, if you click on this little rewind button here, it'll show you the historical versions. So if we're up to version 4 at the moment, but if you did want to jump back to, where are we? That's the beta, to the stable, then you can get a previous version if for some reason there's like a module that wasn't updated in the new version. But there is firmware updates coming that are gonna sort of solve that problem. So let's go back to downloads, and that was the stable version. And then the other one that we're looking at is Companion Beta 4.0. I'm not actually gonna go over the beta today. We're gonna look at the stable versions of this. But this is where you would grab that from, and you can get your version of that from there. And then the other thing that's available is the CompanionPi as a Raspberry Pi disk image. So if you do have a Raspberry Pi and you don't want to run this on your main computer, then you can basically download this disk image here, so just 3.5.2, and download that and flash it using the free software onto your micro SD card, and then you can run a bootable version of Companion on a Raspberry Pi on the network, and then just access it in any web browser like we've got going on here. The other one is Companion Satellite, which is once we move away from sort of a basic Companion installation where it's on the one computer, we can look at attaching multiple computers to our configuration, and that's where Companion Satellite is going to come in. So again, you can grab your Linux, Mac, Apple Silicon, or Intel or Windows version. And so this is not our main application. This is the application that sits on a secondary computer and acts as the interface for the USB hub so that Stream Decks can connect back to the first installation. But for now, you want to grab the Companion 3.5.2 or whatever the latest version is when you're looking at this one. And then I just briefly wanted to touch on Buttons, which is new software from Bitfocus in conjunction with Elgato. It's more a paid tier. It's similar to Companion, but has a sort of newer interface and is probably more focused at enterprise levels. If we jump over to here, this is where you could download Buttons and try that out. If you go to Products, Buttons, then you can get a bit of an idea of what you can do with it and the interface there, but do note that it's not free. It is $9 a month per 3 services. So you got to bear that in mind. Whereas what I'm looking at today with Companion is free user source software that will always be free. So that is what we are working with. Once you've downloaded that, basically just open that disk image and copy it to the applications folder. So if I just hide this, it'll probably be on the desktop. You can open that up or on your downloads folder and basically copy it, like drag it into your applications folder. And you can see I've got a few companions in here, but you grab 3.5.2, double click that to open it. And then that will actually, you've got to give it permission to see things on the network if you're using Mac, but then it'll actually sit up here. So it might be, at first you might be like, where's the application window? But it's hiding up here in the taskbar, and that's where you can open the Companion window from the menu bar, and we can show hide window. And this is going to show us how we are going to open up the application, which is sort of running in the background, so to speak. And we can choose the local versus a network address for Companion to run on, which if I just jump over here, you can see that localhost 127.0.0.1 means that this is installed on the computer and I'm just accessing it on this local computer here. Whereas if I use either a wired or wireless address, so I've turned off my Wi-Fi for my computer because I just want to run it through Ethernet primarily if you can, but you can also run it through Wi-Fi, and this is where these addresses will show up, and these are the actual IP addresses of the computer, and that becomes Companion's IP address that we're going to reference. So for my local one, I'm just running it locally 127, and then I would launch the GUI like that, and it'll open up an application like this in the web browser. All right, I'm going to jump over to part 2. I'm going to jump up here. And so we're going to take a look at part 2, which is the network setup, because I was referring there to network addresses. And so I just want to go through what your particular hardware might set up and what we're trying to achieve there. So let's take a step back and look at the fact that we have Elgato, which is a Stream Deck application that you might be familiar with, which is on the local computer. So this is probably what you're used to running if you haven't used Companion before, is you have the Stream Deck software on a computer, you plug in USB, and your buttons show up, and away you go, and you're using Elgato's software to program the Stream Deck. And that is using the local connection 127.0.0.1. But in our new world here, we're using Bitfocus Companion. So we actually want to shut down Elgato's application because it's going to conflict with the USB trying to control the device here. And so we quit the Elgato software and we're only running Stream Deck in a very sort of simple setup. As I mentioned, you could just set it to the local address 127.0.0.1, and you can be up and running Bitfocus Companion just like that. And then if we look at sort of a basic network connection, this is using sort of Ethernet or Wi-Fi as the IP address rather than the local one. And the advantage of this is that it allows us to access this more across our local network rather than just on the computer. So if we take a look at this, this is the local 127.0.0.1 scenario, but then we are going to add it to a router and a switch. You've probably already got this set up. If you're connected to the internet, your computer is connected over Wi-Fi to a router. From the router, which is controlling the IP addresses, there's probably a switch which you can use for Ethernet. If you have the option, always go with Ethernet because it's just going to be more reliable than Wi-Fi. But you can certainly do all this over Wi-Fi if you need to, and there are some really cool things you can do with Wi-Fi. So this is what I would see as a sort of basic equipment setup, and you would have your Stream Deck to sort of control the equipment that you want to control, connected to a computer, and then the computer running Companion is on the network, and that is what is then connected to all of your equipment. So PTZ cameras, ATEM minis, web presenters, like, and hundreds more devices. There's so many things that you can connect to this, literally like 500 different connections in Companion, which is what makes it so powerful to run all of this from a simple Stream Deck, having access from one portal into hundreds of pieces of equipment. So that's our basic equipment setup, but let's take a look now if we were to do more of a remote control. And remember, we were talking before about downloading Companion Satellite, and there's also another application called ScreenDeck. I always get that confused with Stream Deck. And so what that is basically allows you to add in a secondary computer somewhere on your network. It can be over Wi-Fi, or it can be over Ethernet, and that allows you to add in another Stream Deck maybe further away. And so in this scenario, we've got Companion Satellite running on that secondary computer. You'll notice that, like in this example, my Companion application is running on this computer, and the Companion address is 192.168.1.11. So that's Companion. And then this computer over here is connected on 1.16. And so that's the Companion Satellite address that will show up back in Companion. And that's what enables this Stream Deck XL to talk over USB through the computer, back through the network, and then make changes in Companion. So that's a really nice way to get around USB lengths, which are limited to 15 feet and that kind of stuff. But there's more that you can do, which is remote control over a phone or a tablet or a laptop, basically using a web browser. And what's great about this is you can get started right away without needing any Stream Deck hardware. And so you can download Companion for free, and you can use your existing pieces of phones or tablets to get your remote control. So this scenario adds in other devices, again, to your router. So you've got to be on the same network so that we're addressing the same subnet. So you see how all of these addresses are 192.168.1. It might be different depending on what your router is. Generally, those first three numbers will be the same. And then that last number is sort of the device ID. So here you've got a phone, which is .21, and a tablet, which is .22, and another laptop, which is .23. And so that just enables you to control things over, like for example, on my iPad, I could use that to control the show on an iPad or on the phone and that kind of stuff. So really neat there. And then likewise with, like we did with Companion Satellite, if we also on that computer want to add in another Companion Satellite, then we could add in more Stream Deck. So you can see how you can sort of grow your studio or house of worship or whatever your environment is to have multiple workstations all connected back to that one installation that began very humbly and is now controlling a whole lot of things. I just want to take a moment to talk about the Elgato plugin and just the concept of one USB host per computer. If you are used to running Elgato's Stream Deck software, and you just plug in the Stream Deck and it is controlled via the Stream Deck software. If you're then also trying to run Companion, you might find there's a confliction there because the two programs are trying to both control the USB host. And so we need to separate that out, and there's a couple of things that we can do for that. The basic principle is that there is one USB host per computer, which means that you can either use Companion or Companion Satellite on a computer, or run the Elgato native Stream Deck software. And that means that this USB device here will be controlled by either of those applications, but not both at the same time. So the limitation here is that the Elgato software is just running a single surface. And so you can't have more than one Stream Deck and control your Companion profile with more than one surface. Whereas with Companion, you can run multiple surfaces and just sort of build it out however you want, which is what makes that so easy. But there is a way around that. which is if you want to, and I'll show you how to do this in a little bit, but within Companion, you can go into the settings tab and you can enable the plugin, which will actually disable the direct connection that Companion has with the USB devices. So no longer will Companion be directly connecting to the Stream Deck, and that will free up you to have Elgato's software open, and you'll be using the Stream Deck through Elgato software, and then in the background, Companion will be providing buttons that you can add into your Stream Deck profile. So in this scenario, we're running Companion on the computer, but we have disabled the direct connection, which has enabled the Stream Deck plugin for Elgato. And then, so this Stream Deck in this scenario is being controlled by the Elgato's software. But there's a way around this where in this scenario, you could still on a secondary computer run Companion Satellite and plug in that USB because it's a different USB controlled on a different computer. And then you can have multiple Stream Decks on that secondary computer speaking back to the same Companion installation. So that's one way to get around that, but it does involve two computers. And then there's another scenario, which is you could run Companion more as a server. So it's just kind of on a computer, on the network, accessible. And you've got that plugin enabled, meaning it's not going to run any USB directly from Companion on that computer. But then on the remote computers, you can use Companion Satellite to run multiple profiles, and you can have that one Elgato profile that is connected to the Elgato Stream Deck software. And that means you can kind of mix and match your buttons. So you could have some native Elgato buttons on, a side of your profile, and then the other part of the profile could be Companion if there's buttons from Elgato Stream Deck software that you really want to use. All right. Next up, let's take a look at the Companion graphical user interface, or the Companion GUI, and we're just going to take a look at how to navigate that in Companion. So the first thing you're going to want to do is launch the GUI from the menu bar and choose the IP address. So I'm going to jump back over here, and we had up here, we're going to show hide window. Oops, I already hit it. So I'm going to show hide window again, and we're going to choose a local interface. For this demo, I'm going to just use 127.0.0.1, and then we go launch GUI like that. And then we are into let me just see if I've got this, sidebars. Okay, into the interface. So I'll just run, first of all, through the sidebar here, just so that you know what options there are. You've got a configuration wizard, if that can sort of help you lead through some of the initial setup things. This is where you have your emulators. So from here, you can click onto virtual Stream Deck controls. Web buttons is kind of like all of your buttons just laid out in one big page, which I don't use very much. Bugs and features, if there's a problem that you have, you can go to GitHub, and if you've got a bug or something that you want to see, that's where you would go to submit that request. Community forum on Facebook. This is where you can join the public discussion on Facebook for more general questions. And there's a Slack channel. You can donate on this button. There's getting started documentation, which is really helpful. Just wanted to point that out because there's a ton of things that you can do in here, and that will explain sort of more in-depth variables and scripts that you can create within that as you get more advanced. I know we're starting off quickly. And then this last tab, what's new, is a really nice way of just sort of, when a new version comes out, just kind of see what are the new features that are available to you rather than having to sort of keep up to date with everything that's going on in the GitHub. All right, so now let's take a look at connections. This is the first tab that we're going to look at, and it's how we are going to add equipment to our profile and manage the IP addresses of those equipments. So under the connections tab, this is where as you can see, there's hundreds of pieces of equipment there. So you might want to do something like ATEM, and I'm just going to scroll back up. You can search for the particular equipment that you have. So you could add in ATEM, and you could add in, I got a Canon PTZ, and add in that. Okay, so these are connections that we have added in, and they'll show up on the network like this. And for example, with the ATEM, it auto configures here. So I could just, I've got a Pro sitting on the desk and ATEM Mini Pro, and I could just select that and go save. And now I have control of the ATEM Mini that I have over here. Whoop, just bring that into view, just sitting off there. And I can start building buttons from that. But otherwise you might need to go into manual, and you can type in your target IP address. This is where, for example, with the ATEM Mini, you might want to go to ATEM Setup if you've downloaded the software from Blackmagic. I'll just wait for that to boot up. And here we go. Okay, it's on the other window here. I'll bring this across. No ATEM found. Pro ATEM, and we'll go to this one. And this is where in the setup panel, you can do DHCP, which will automatically assign it an address. But sometimes if you reboot stuff, the router might reassign an IP address. So that's where it's better. It's more reliable to have a static IP address, which is we would designate a number. So for example, I'm running my network 192.168.7 is my sort of subnet here. And then .43 is the actual device IP address on my network. And then these are my sort of subnet, gateway, primary DNS, all that kind of stuff. So once you've set that address, you'll see that this is what would automatically show up. So .43 is what the Pro shows up as. All right, so that is the connection. Let's take a look at the buttons tab. And first of all, I want to talk about just sort of the canvas and navigating that. So click on the buttons tab, and over here is the, you'll have just one page to start with. And you've got these up and down buttons, and you'll just create a button, and we could go like, Cam 1, like if we want to put camera 1 in, and we could go in the press actions down here, we can select our ATEM, and we could search for program and set program input. And so now I can say on the mix effect layer 1, I want to put camera 1 into program, and in my feedback section over here, that's where I can go program. I know some of these shortcuts. ATEM tele program. If the camera 1 is in, make it red. And for example, this little folder icon down here is just where you can click if you don't know the shortcuts yet, but you can just search for things, ATEM, and you can just scroll through all of the feedback available. So that's my camera 1. Maybe I'll make the background like a dark red to show me that I'm going to be putting it into program. And we can add in PNGs and text alignment, or we could sort of set the text size. And I've got my program for camera 1 there. And so now I can basically select this button and copy and paste. Oh, sorry, copy and select a new button and paste. And then sort of update this button, camera 2, and then in my feedbacks, camera 2. And we can see on the ATEM that it is on camera 2. Let me just go a bit wider on this shot here, camera 2. Let me just pull back over here so you can see what's going on. Over here. So you'll see these buttons change. You can always shift click. So I can shift click camera 1 and camera 2, and you can see that this is switching the ATEM Mini Pro. And it's got feedback, so I know which button I'm on. That's the basic kind of how to do a button, and the color and the font changes that you can have, and the feedback settings. If you do have a Stream Deck Plus, this is where you can turn on rotary actions, And you can also assign rotate left and right actions. And then if you wanted to, there's a release actions down here. And that could be, so you press a button down and then only when you release that action would happen. And then also you can add a duration group. So by default, it's 1,000 milliseconds, and I can go, I usually make this about 500, and I also make it execute while held. And so now what this has is a short release and a held. So if I move this into the short release, now it means this button is behaving where if I do a simple press, it's going to put that into, it's going to run the program action. But if I held it down, it's going to switch something else. So I often use this for like auxiliary, aux output source here. So outputs 1, camera 1. So here you can see I've got my program switching if I just press it, but if I hold it down, it's going to change the HDMI out to camera 1, or you sort of build it out for inputs 2, 3, 4, 5, multi-view, program, all that kind of stuff. So you can build more complicated buttons there that can give you more functionality and save you some screen real estate. So that's kind of the button section of that. Let's take a look at, on the buttons tab, the pages tab, which is fairly new to Companion. So just the next one over is pages. By default, you're only going to have one page in here, but you can add in more pages. I think you can just add it straight in. Add in pages like this. And you can give this a name. So, this could be home, and this could be like camera switching. And then this could be, PTZ control, something like that. And so you can see these are the 3 pages that I have now available. And I can switch over to it, and it is a new page. Go back here. And then in my up and down here is how you could scroll between those 3 ones. I prefer using like a page jump button, so I could create like, page 2. And then it's a surface, set surface to page, and then it's going to jump the current surface of whatever surface I'm on to page, and then you can select a page, camera switching. So that's the way in which you can go, and maybe I'll call this cameras, and I'll make it smaller, make that really small as cameras. So that would jump me across to page 2, and I could copy that and paste that onto page 2, and then I could change this to home, and I set this to home, and then we have a Stream Deck where we can have a home page and jump to a specific page like ATEM switching or PTZ control, and then jump back to our home page directly rather than having to, sequentially go up and down with these buttons. The next one is under the buttons is the presets tab. So I was showing you before how to build a button out from scratch, but if you just want to get started very quickly, then you can come over to this presets tab here. I'm just going to go back to page 1, and you'll see that for all of the modules that you have connected, there are presets available. So I have, for example, under the ATEM, where are we? Preview row. So I could get, I could just drag this one onto, let's go down the bottom here. 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. And if I go back, I go back to the program row, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is probably what you want to do just to get started. You can drag in buttons. And again, shift click, I can sort of demo the buttons here. So on my ATEM, which I might move this one out of the way and see if I can get this one in a little closer so you can see what's happening with the ATEM. Okay, so I'm gonna hit my previews like that, so I can put the different inputs into previews, and I can do the hard switching of inputs 1, 2, 3, and 4. So really easy way to get started. as you can see, you know, with the ATEMs particularly, I know they're very popular. There is a ton of presets here that you could build out pages and pages of control with that. And likewise with the Canon PTZs, there's a whole lot of, you know, recalling different presets and that kind of stuff that you could drag in, or navigation for, is it pan tilt? Yeah, so navigation like this to drag in buttons to move the camera around. All right, and so that is buttons. Let's take a look now at surfaces, and we're going to start off looking at the physical surfaces. So if you jump over to the surfaces tab, this is where you'll see your configured surfaces jump up. If you bear with me, I'm just going to jump over to my main profile. This is sort of changing gears a bit. Where is it? Over, not that one, not that. I've opened up a few tabs now. Here, this one. Just because I've got a lot of surfaces connected already, and so I can show you what is happening in there. So physical surfaces, when you attach a, they'll show up like, I don't have any physical surfaces attached at the moment, but it'll show up with a serial number like this, and then you can give it a name. So I've got like Stream Deck XL 1 and 2. So for example, this Stream Deck here, I go back to here, and that will show up. At the moment, it's showing up more like under Stream Deck, sorry, Companion Satellite is how I'm connecting this back here. But physically, you could just plug it in, and that's where it would show up. You can have in your settings tab, you can choose if you want this to be, I'll get to groups in a second. You can either use the last page at startup, so it'll just sort of start wherever you left it. Or you could set it so that it always starts on a particular page if you want it to revert back to some sort of home page. I usually just leave it as use the last page at startup. And then I'm using the current page I'm on is 3. And then you can set the horizontal and vertical offset. I wonder if this is the right surface. Yes, it is. So you'll see here, the buttons start at, if I go back to my buttons. So I'm on page 3, and you'll see here, up here, page 300. So the buttons start at 00 is this top button up here. So when I'm on surfaces for Stream Deck 1 settings, this is where the horizontal comes off. So if I go negative, I can see I'm moving these off screen, and negative. So I'm sort of moving these buttons off. And it just means you can have multiple surfaces and a larger grid if you wanted to go that route. Let me just get back to 0 here. So that's where you would offset that. You've got the brightness, and then surface rotation. If you did want to sort of rotate the buttons 90 degrees or counterclockwise, you can do that. And then there's pin code there. So that's the physical surfaces that you'll have set up for a Stream Deck. The next one is in the Surfaces tab. We're going to take a look at emulators. And what's amazing about these is that you don't need any hardware, and you can just replicate them. So you can sort of spin up a surface for someone. So you might have a Stream Deck and you're using that to switch, and then maybe someone's assisting you and they're doing video playback, and you want to be able to create a profile and just let them control that surface. So they're just on a page where they're controlling different video playback, and you don't want to buy a whole new Stream Deck, but you can give them a tablet or a computer, and they can do that task without needing a whole new surface attached. So very simply, if you go over to your surfaces and where are we? Add emulator here. So we've got rescan USB, which will check locally, add emulator and add group. So add emulator. You can see it's dumped one down here. I'm going to call this new emulator. And each emulator has a unique string to reference it. And it's basically, by default, just another surface. So I could say the current page is going to be on page 1. By default, it's got 4 rows and 8 columns, which is basically a Stream Deck XL. But you could change that and make it smaller. Like for example, I'm running a an emulator for my show, which is basically I bring up the next cues with one button, and then the next one cuts back to my super source view here, so I can sort of talk about a topic, throw back. So that's basically just an emulator with two buttons on it, and I have it on phone, and then it's sitting on my desk here, so that it's just so I can sort of keep more oriented to camera, and I can see what the next topic is. So that's how I use an emulator. So we close this one down, and new emulator. So then across here on this little folder, so you can either trash it, or if you go open, that'll open up the screen in a web browser. And so now I have my whole profile here that I can access. And this is what I'm talking about with Companion and multiple surfaces, why it's more powerful than just running the Elgato Stream Deck natively, because it gives you so many more surfaces. But you can also run them side by side if you need to. And so this is basically an address. So 192.168.7.11. Remember, that was my Companion address. And so I'm on a different computer, but I've got Companion running on a Mac Mini in my rack server. And so it's looking back to that Companion installation, port number 8000 emulator. And then this was the unique string here that we referenced. And now this is a whole surface that is independent of other surfaces. And the important thing here is that you notice that this Stream Deck is not changing as I'm changing this surface. Whereas when you're running the Elgato plugin, there's only one surface. So if you were changing a profile on one Stream Deck, then the other Stream Deck would also be updating, and that doesn't work for multiple operators. So that is how you would set up a emulator. And there's one more thing you can do with that, which is, I'm gonna go back to my new emulator settings. You can enable support for Logitech R400 and remotes. I wonder if I have one in here. I do. And so this is where you would, if you turn this one on, just like that, as long as you have this, I'm not gonna press it now because I'm not quite sure what it's connected to, but you can get like a $40 remote clicker like this, and which you would use for like PowerPoint advancing slides. But if you've got this web browser open in the foreground, then instead of advancing a slide backwards and forwards, it's going to read the clicks as, I think it's buttons 2 and 3, I can't remember off the top of my head, but you can basically put a button there and trigger it from a remote using an emulator. The catch is you've got to have this web browser front and center, which kind of locks up a computer. So just bear that in mind. The next one is surfaces, and we're looking at groups. So if you've got multiple Stream Decks, you can actually pair them together so that you get a larger canvas. So for example, I've got one Stream Deck here, which is just acting on its own. But I could get, if I get, let me see if I can pull this wider here. I could get a second Stream Deck like this, and basically have them side by side on the canvas. So remember we had on, where are we, this one? And I'll get to how to do this in a second, but with the canvas, when you start, you're gonna have just 8x4 here, but you can actually add in more buttons, and you're gonna have, you can have bigger canvases. So rather than just one 32 button Stream Deck, you could keep your buttons going out and have a secondary Stream Deck here. And basically what you do is under surfaces, just go add group, and I'm gonna call this live demo group, like that. Live demo group, and so that's this group here. Once I've created that group, I can go to the Stream Decks that I want. So I've got my Stream Decks 1 and 2, which are here, and under settings, I can say either standalone, or I can assign it to a, where are we, new group, live demo group is what I had it in, and it'll go into there. And then my other one, which was Stream Deck, that's offline. So many things getting confused here. This one, settings and live demo group. Let's go live demo group. and cool. And so now you can see both of these Stream Decks have the same profile because they're actually overlaid on each other. So I need to separate them out. So that's where if I scroll up the top, you'll see my live demo group under Stream Deck. These are actually around the other way. So my Stream Deck 1, I need to move across. So under settings, we go back to our horizontal offset, and I'm gonna move it horizontally. So if you watch these buttons here, let me just see if I can, where's it going? Let me go to a little bit wider so you can see what I'm doing. If I offset this one, is that the right way? Wrong way. So I'm gonna offset that one. No, that is the right way. I just don't have any buttons there. Okay, so I'm moving this one off, and then this is now blank canvas that, yeah, so for example, I've got under my scene page and my show page, I've got buttons that are sort of spilling over here. And now that is the larger canvas grid that we had under here. See how I've like a larger canvas? And so that is on my scene page, the buttons that sort of match up with those ones. All right, let me just go back and live demo group. I'm just gonna delete that group so that I can get my Stream Decks back. And this one was 0, 0, and Stream Deck 1, and I'm gonna offset just because I want that to be its own surface because I'm running a live show. Okay, so I'm gonna pull that one back and get this one back into its little spot. Okay, so, and I went over surfaces and settings. Next up, let's take a look at triggers. So triggers is a really powerful way of automating things within Companion, and I'll show you a bunch of ways of which I run those ones. I think I forgot to cover this, but if you have Stream Deck Studios or any other satellites under this Discover or Remote Services tab, this is where they will show up, and you can configure them, but most of the time they just sort of show up in the services. But let's move on to triggers, and you'll see I've got a bunch of triggers and schedules that can run. So I'll just give you an idea of some of the triggers that I build to run this show. So I've got 4 here that I can turn on a sort of auto pre-roll, show start, end show, wrap if I want it to time it out. So rather than me at sort of 5 to 2 hitting sort of my pre-roll to get all the show running and start YouTube and the encoder and the recording and all that kind of stuff, I have a trigger, which is basically, so you can just add trigger, give it a name. You can test the actions here, and then you can have different events. So these include on any button depress or press, the computer becoming locked, unlocked, a condition becoming false or true. You can choose at sunrise or sunset of the time zone that you're in, on a variable change, once on a specific date or time. If you're trying to say like Thursdays at 2 o'clock, that's when I go live and I just want to make sure it only runs at that time and no other time. You can run it on startup. So if you wanted Companion to boot certain things when you boot up Companion, make sure they're running. A time interval or a time of day or a web client connect. So there's a bunch of triggers that you can have here that are then going to take an action. You can set it to a condition. So I've got variable check Boolean expression. So I'm basically, I've set a 2 o'clock as a variable saying when the internal clock hits 2 o'clock, and when that matches up, run this action. And for this action, so again, you can just hit this folder icon and all of the different actions that you have available, you can add them in just like you would with a button. And I've chosen trigger press. So I'm saying, if it is 13:55, 5 to 2, and if this trigger is enabled, then press page 4, and then button 1.4 is down here. So this is where I come over to buttons, page 4, 1.4, and it's this one. So rather than me having to physically press this pre-roll button, I can set up you can see it's highlighted auto pre-roll here. So I can turn that off or on. So I'm sort of like arming my show to just automatically run. And it's nice because it's sort of like someone who keeps me on track for timing rather than me having to, you know, watch the clock and stuff. So it just sort of keeps me on track a bit more with that one. All right, so that's that trigger. I got the same sort of thing for starting the show, ending, wrapping, that kind of stuff. The other one I have is auto H2R. So again, I've got on condition becoming true, which is this graphic status of when this H2R graphic comes on air, then it's going to basically use the YouTube connection that I've got to add a chapter marker in YouTube. So if you're on the live stream, you'll notice as we're going, when I run comments and stuff, these become new chapter markers. So if someone has a comment, make sure you have a comment, say hi. And then I bring that on screen, then there's a timecode marker in the live stream so that someone can later on see where that question landed. I have a VLC, again, on condition becoming true, which is using this ATEM. If the VLC input, basically, you know, VLC, I'm playing back onto input 7, and if I put my ATEM into input 7, and that's a true condition, then it is going to do this action, which is resume, so it's going to play. And then I've also got a similar one for auto out, which is basically, again, the condition becoming true, which is if the VLC playback time gets down to 2, then I'm going to trigger the ATEM to transition across back to camera 1 and then pause VLC. So this is a bit more advanced, but I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the things that you can do in triggers. Some of the basic ones might simply be this kind of one of setting up a trigger so that you can, at a certain, you know, if it's a certain time of day, like for example, it's not specific time of day. So you can put in a time and choose certain days of the week. So if you had a service, for example, that only runs on Sundays at 10 a.m., I gotta click that. I'll say 11 a.m. is the service, like that. So now and you gotta get rid of the other things here, but this will say on the event, time of day, that just get rid of the conditions, and then it'll say press this button, and that can be a button to start the service, or in the actions, you could just put in the actions to start the service. So, and then you don't have to physically be there, and that can help with, you know, volunteers. Whoops, I'm getting too many here. Let me just delete that and delete that. All right, so that's the triggers. Let's take a look at variables, and there's a bunch of different variables that you can do in Companion to control things. So we're gonna go over to my variables tab, which now has its own tab in Companion. Just line this one up. And so there's custom variables is this first one here, and you can basically, I got a ton here. So like I've been working on a clock recently, and you can filter what you've got available. And I'm gonna scroll down the bottom. So you could create a variable called live stream demo. Oops. Delete. So I remember to delete it and add that in like that. And I've got to remove this filter, live stream. So this is the custom variable that I've got here, and then I can just set the value. So this can be a way of just having an on-off state. So it could be a 1, or it could be a 0, or you could literally type on or off. And then the persist value just means that when you reboot Companion, this is always going to be the value at startup, even if you know, the value changes in the interim. So you can uncheck that. And then you can use this, you can hit copy here, copy like that, copy to clipboard, and then this $, parentheses, custom, semicolon, and then this live stream demo delete. that is now a variable that I can put into a button. So for example, remember this says on, and I just copied this. If we go back to our buttons page, and I'll just find a new button here, create a button, and if I paste in that variable, instead of that text, it's actually bringing the variable on in there, and so that's how you can have some more dynamic names on your buttons. Let me just delete that one. Variables. All right, I'm going to delete that one too because I don't want to lose track of what is in my installation here. So we're going to go back now, and the next one I want to look at is variables which are internal variables. So these are sort of within the core Companion application. So again, if you go over to the the variables tab, internal, and you'll see all of the variables that are available to you. So I can see internal all IP. These are the IP addresses that we could access Companion on. The one that you will use probably a lot is, if you scroll down, is quite simply the time of day here. So where are we? 12 hours, minutes, seconds. So you could copy this one, time, hours, minutes, seconds, and you'll see 1451 is what that is. And then again, remember I can go back to my button, create a button, and paste this in, and you'll see that instead of it being that this internal time HMS seconds, it's going to be the actual time of day, and you can bring in clocks, or you could do, if you just wanted, you know, the seconds and make the buttons bigger, you could have it as seconds instead. So that is an example of some of the variables that are available within Companion. Make sure you look there. And lastly, on variables is every time you add a new connection, there's going to be a new, usually a new set of variables that are available that you can use to make buttons or provide feedback. So under variables, you'll see these are the different applications that I've got installed here. So for example, the ATEM1 is what is running my ATEM right now. And all of these variables have these values that are true at the moment. So there's a whole lot of like audio inputs, audio routing. Keep scrolling down. There's a lot of audio routing. Lots of variables you can choose from. You can look at what is on a particular auxiliary, you know, so on auxiliary output number 9, I have input number 4 that is coming out on that. The names of the IDs. So for example, the long name of my camera 1 here is called Canon 1. And likewise, you can have the short name, all the macro names, all that kind of stuff. So each of the connections that you have in Companion are going to have a certain amount of variables, and then you can use that to either put on a button text or even to sort of assess in button feedback, so that if something is in, you know, if the ATEM Mini's HDMI out has the multi-view on, then you could use that variable and highlight that to show you that it's on. There's so much to go into there. I will not go into that anymore because there's just a ton of stuff that you can use with variables, and that's what makes Companion so powerful. So make sure if you do bring in a connection, so I've got like a YouTube connection, Google Sheets, ATEMs, Canon PTZs, H2R graphics, a Visca, like a Sony Visca PTZ, smart plugs, like there's a bunch of stuff that you can do with that, and this will be all the feedback. So for example, the web presenter, you can see the current streaming state is streaming, and so I can use that in my profile to say that if this variable equals streaming, then make the button on the Stream Deck red, that kind of stuff. So that's how you can use variables. And also variables with triggers means that you can watch for things. So with triggers, remember we were saying like if a condition becomes true, we could say like if the web presenter shows that it's streaming, then take this action, which could be automatically hit record, so that when you are streaming, the trigger is automatically also recording. So you can set up triggers and variables in that, using that method. All right, next tab is settings, and I'll just sort of go briefly over some of the things that I find useful here. So the settings tab, all right, installation name, you can give your installation a name, which is useful because it will come up here in the browser. So for example, remember I had this other one, so this is my local computer here, which has another installation, and I don't want to get confused with that. So it's nice being able to go, okay, Mini, I know that my Mac Mini is my main installation, so I'm in the right in the right profile here, because otherwise, you know, you've got a ton of stuff going on. The default export file name, this is in here already, but you can change this to, so this is like the date and the time and then the host name of the computer. And that when you export a file through, which we'll get to in a sec, that'll be the file name of it, which is just nice to be able to set that because you can record, you know, keep a backup of all your profiles. The main one I have here is on my buttons, which is show the top bar on each button. By default, this is on, and I'm always turning this off. I wish it could turn off, but you'll see on my Stream Deck here, if I can zoom in on it, the top bar is now turned on for all of these things, and that's a little, I mean, it shows you the number, which is useful in a bit, I guess, like in a way, but I prefer just having the real estate. So if I switch that off, you'll see, I'll just go back to full screen so you can see if I switch it off, they're just much cleaner and bigger graphical buttons that you can design in the way that you want. So that's what I have that one set to. The button grid, so you can edit the size. Note that this isn't the number of rows and columns. This is within the grid where the minimum number of the row count and the maximum is. So by default, it's 0, 0. And so you can expand your grid by like moving the minimum row backwards and the maximum row forwards, and then the minimum column backwards and forwards as well. So I've got a sort of larger canvas here. The canvas that I've got essentially is holding 4 Stream Deck XLs plus another column on the side for the Stream Deck Studio. So that's why I've got this little button here as a sort of rotating button to rotate the surface. But this is basically like from here to here is one Stream Deck, and then you've got another one down here, and another one over here, and another one over there. So that's my grid, which is 8 rows by 18 columns. And you can allow expanding grid view if you want. I just have that turned off. All right, surfaces. This is where by default you'll have watch for new USB devices and discoverable remote surfaces. These are turned on. I also normally have enabled direct connection to Stream Deck because I don't usually run the Stream Deck plugin, but I turned it on for this this one, so which is fine. Like I was showing you before, because I'm running it remotely through satellite, this doesn't matter because my Mac Mini doesn't actually have any USB connected in directly. But this is the setting that you would need to, sorry, what am I saying? Enable or disable? Enable direct connection. Okay, so if you enable this, then you can run your Stream Decks directly through Companion, and you can just quit Elgato's software. If you disable it, then the Elgato software will be enabled. And so I've got it disabled at the moment, which means that I have enabled the, go back to surfaces, the plugin, and that looks like this. Under the surfaces tab, this will be plugin. Basically, it's this is the surface that you get to connect back to your Stream Deck. And whereas with the emulators, you can just keep creating multiple surfaces, with Elgato's software, you only get the one plugin, which is why you would get, if you have someone else using a surface, it would sort of update that along the way. So that is where that will turn up. Do note that you have to restart Companion if you want those changes to take effect. There's other surfaces that you can have here if you have X keys or a Loupedeck or Razor stream controller devices, Contour Shuttle, which I have one lying around somewhere, VEC foot pedal, Blackmagic ATEM micro panel you can use as well, and the 203 Systems Mistrix. Turn these on, you can control those other hardware surfaces from Companion. I don't have any of those connected, so I've got that. All right, so then pin lockout, satellite, all this stuff can basically stay the default. You don't really need to play around with that. Admin user password doesn't, I've never really used that. HTTP web server experiments, all that kind of stuff. All right, so that is the settings tab. All right, we're almost there, and I just want to look at the export tab. So this is really important if you are, backing up your profile properly, because if your computer dies or corrupts, or then you need to make sure you've got a copy of things, or even if you paste over a page or delete a page, you want to be able to go back and pull those in. So this is where we can, under the import export tab, we can export configuration. So if you want to do the whole profile, just leave all these connections, buttons, triggers, custom variables, surfaces. That's all of what we've got. The compressed default is good. You can just leave it as that. If you're doing more like external editing, then you might want to change the file here. But when it says compressed, it's not actually compressing the PNGs or whatever that you have in there. So it's not like your image quality of your graphics is gonna be less. So compressed is good. And then again, the file name was pulled from the settings that we had before, but here you could update it. So, you could call it Tuesday or whatever you want, and hit download. You may need to go keep, and then you'll see that this is now in my, I've got to drag this over here. Oop. Here we go. In my folder here, and this is the Companion configuration, 3.7 meg is what I've got. And that is the profile that has all of your settings in there. So if you don't want to have all of your settings, you could turn off things like, maybe just want to export buttons. This is where you would do that. But I would say back up everything as always. And then lastly, also important is knowing how to import configurations and to bring either profiles in, and I just put a link in the chat there if you want to download a profile that I've got to control an ATEM Mini Pro. That's a sort of free download to get you started. But also if you have exported your profile, you might want to bring that back in. And so that's where we're going to do that. I'm going to jump back over to my, where are we? I'm going to jump back to my local installation. So remember, I just had this one here. I created 3 pages. And we'll start by going to import, export, import configuration, and I'm going to go to where is that? This one, Tuesday. Remember, I had this profile, so I've got the entire configuration here, and I'll just wait for that. So there's 3 options here. Most likely, you might just be doing a full reset and import here. I'll get to that in a second, but we can start with triggers. So if you click on the triggers tab, you can, where are we? Unselect all, down the bottom here. Unselect all. So you could go, okay, I just want to bring in my auto pre-roll that I was talking about before. And then below that will be linking connections from the profile that you're importing to what's already in the system or what's not in the system. So you can see that because I have an ATEM in the profile already, this is saying connect so the profile that I exported had 3 different ATEMs, and it's automatically gone, okay, I'm just gonna, ATEMs 1, 2, and 3 in the profile are gonna map to the existing ATEM connection that we had in here. And so this is another way that you can build out a profile for one ATEM, export it, and then bring it back in for a second ATEM. So in this instance, maybe I want to say ATEM 1 is going to go to ATEM, but ATEM 2 is going to go to create a new connection. and ATEM 3 is going to create a new connection, and that way I've got 3 separate ATEMs that are coming back in rather than them all just going onto the same one. Same thing with like, I've got, you know, Canon PTZ 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so I could go create a new connection. Same thing with my Sony Visca command here. I could either ignore it altogether, or I could create a new connection because there's no Visca that I'd pre-loaded in there. So you get the idea with all of these new connections. And then with the triggers that we're on at the moment, we can either replace the existing triggers that we have in there. I don't have any at the moment. Or we could import and append to existing. So if I go import append and go to triggers, you'll see that I just brought in that one pre-roll condition here. And if I go back to my import export, this is where I could go to, I had the show start, where was that? Auto start show. And maybe I go, okay, now I want to bring in this, and I could either replace all of the triggers, or I could just append it to what I have in there already. So again, if I go back to triggers, you'll see that now I've added that in. So you got to be mindful of this, because if you click that again like that, now if I go to triggers, I've got 2 triggers that are kind of the same but different, meaning they have the same name, but if I had certain buttons to control them on and off, they're not actually controlling the same one on and off. So that's where you bring in triggers. Let's go back over to triggers. Buttons, you can go page by page. So you've got your source page and your destination page. So my source page is within my profile. I have 99 pages of things that I can bring in. So this is my shot page, scene, show, all that kind of stuff. So you can also search for something. So I know within my profile, I've got like a VLC page, and I can go VLC, great. I want to be able to bring that one in. And on my destination page, I can either overwrite an existing page, like the PTZ page, or I could insert a new page. So I'm going to go like that. And then the VLC, where is that? VLC, who did I lose? Go past that one. Here we are, VLC. Okay, so there's a VLC in there now. I could go like create a new connection if I wanted that to be a separate VLC playback machine. And let me go import to new page like that. And so now if I go over to the buttons page, you'll see I've got page 4 is VLC. I'm just going to go back to settings, turn this top bar off so that it looks better. And now you can see on page 4, I have this whole VLC profile that I have imported onto page 4. Likewise, you can very quickly, if you're working on a profile and you've done a bunch of things and you want to move it to a different page, now here I can just drag this one around. So now VLC is page 3. Or drag it to here. Bear in mind that the page jumps go by numbers. So remember we created this menu system before where I can jump to my cameras, but it actually references page 2. So because I moved VLC to page 2, now if I click that camera button, then it's going to, let me just add an emulator, open this emulator. So if I go to the VLC page, it's going to go back to VLC. So let me go, I can't get out of that because I'm now stuck because the page doesn't jump back. Okay, so you can move your pages around like that, or you can also just come back to here. You can just quickly export a particular page. So now this is just one page that I've exported, which is another way of then just bringing in a single page. All right, let's go back to VLC. So that is how you would do a single page insert if you're bringing in particular pages to a particular part of your profile. And again, you can either direct them to ATEMs or like whatever connection you have already installed. So if I go back to connections, you'll see that now because I've imported this, I've got a lot of connections that have come into my blank profile because they were in my imported one from the one that I'm running the show on. And all right, so then we go import export. That was the buttons. So we did triggers, buttons, and then full import. This is probably what you will do. Like, for example, I have profiles on my website that you can download. So a little bit of promotion here. This is I've got a free one if you want to download this one and install it, but I also have a bunch of, let me just go here, profiles that are built to control P2Z cameras and really big ATEMs and that kind of stuff. And if you download those profiles, that is where you would go import, wait, wrong profile. Let's go over here. So the full import, we've selected our file, and we can export our current config here if we want to just, make a backup here. So it's just dumped it out so that if I overwrite the top of this, then I have a backup of it, and perform a full reset and import the selected components. So I can turn off certain things that I want to do if I don't want them, but I'm basically going to do reset and import. I'm just going to double check that I'm on my local profile here and not my main show. So I'm going to go reset and import. And so now on my local machine here, I've actually brought my Mac Mini's Companion configuration, exported it, and then I'm starting from scratch with my profile. And by default, it opens up this, what do you call it? Configuration wizard. And so it can lead you through that. Watch for newly connected USB devices. There's nothing, like, unless you have some of this hardware, like I don't have X keys, so you could turn that off, but watch for newly connected USB devices. Yes, great. This is where you would choose whether you're running Stream Deck directly or the Elgato software. And remember, if you're running Companion natively, make sure you quit Elgato's software, which always seems to open up again on restart. Next, and don't worry about remote control surfaces. I wouldn't worry about admin GUI at this stage, and you can apply those settings. And we go finish. And then the first thing I would do is jump to settings and turn off this top bar because it is always on by default. And now I have this profile, which is actually connected to all my equipment because it's got the same stuff on the same network. So now I have, like, this profile is live and I have it on two computers. So I'm just gonna, and also my connections here. So for example, my ATEM1 is connected to my Constellation 2ME, and these are all my connections that I have normally to run the show. And everything is looking good. I'm just gonna go and reset this. So just because I don't want to have two configurations on my network particularly, and I'm just gonna reset. So this is again where you would be prompted to export it as a backup, and you can reset some things or everything. And it says review this. This will permanently delete all data, and apply. And now the standby, and it's completely wiped it. So I just X out of this, and you'll see I'm back to just a single page, nothing in it. Got to reset my top bar, and I can just start from scratch with a new computer. All right, hopefully that was helping. Let's take some questions. I realize that was a lot of talking. I usually go for about an hour, but I've gone about 15 minutes over. But this is my kind of, if you've stuck with me this long, then you know how to run Companion, hopefully. And I'll just have a quick squiz through some of these questions. Joel says, can you explain how to control Companion software from two different locations? It's a great question. It's something that I do a lot. My route was, I got a UniFi Dream router, and because within UniFi there's really simple VPN teleport software, which is so simple. And that just meant it sent an invite to my iPhone and to my MacBook at home, and I can basically switch on the VPN, and then I'm back in the studio environment. So just within a web browser, I'm pulling up all of the same Companion controls and that kind of stuff. So basically, you need to set up a VPN and remotely get back into your studio environment or home environment, whatever you're running locally here. Once you're within that environment, everything should run the same in terms of feedback and that kind of stuff. That's a great question because one of the great and powerful things about this is being able to do this remotely. I do that sometimes if I've pre-recorded a show, but I'm elsewhere and I want to play it out from the studio. So I'll have it on the Hyperdeck here, and I've set up Companion using those pre-roll type things that I was showing you before. If I come over to, let me just see if I've got my, what do we got? Super source. So I've got like this pre-roll button here, which you can turn off, but I can also, I think so it doesn't matter. I can have this auto wrap or auto start. So I can, within these buttons, I can put in, like, I can build a show out of it, basically saying, you know, start playback on the Hyperdeck, start the web presenter, go live on YouTube, like all of that stuff is within Companion. And then I can use triggers within Companion to just set it up so it will automatically run the show at a certain time. And that generally works really well unless your 2-year-old hard switches off things in the, where's my switch here? In the studio, which was, that was a couple of weeks ago. I was doing a show where I was playing it back because I'd had an error, and so I was playing it out to you guys, and for the life of me, I was like, why is my web presenter not on the network? And I couldn't figure it out, and I ended up having to use my backup. So the ATEM Extreme that I have here, which is, I treat it like an 8-track recorder. It can also stream, so I ended up just streaming from the ATEM rather than from the web presenter. And when I came into the studio a couple of days later, I realized that I have a bunch of like hard switches on the rack, and my 2-year-old had gone through and switched off, hard switched off of things, so that's not going to help me remotely. But I see Corey says he uses Tailscale on both devices, giving IP address and of the device running the main Companion installation, and then use satellite to connect. So that's a good way to do that one. David uses VPN to access a location for an ice hockey arena, and the Bitfocus Companion is on a Raspberry Pi and then connect to the network, and it works really great. That's also what's nice about that scenario is with the VPN is you can, for example, have Companion running in the studio, go out on location, or even in reverse. But you could have a director sitting in the studio, and which way would you go around with that? But basically use Companion Satellite to have a Stream Deck that is connected via VPN back to your installation. All right. Where are we? Jessica says, how many converters are in your current setup? Would you have any you recommend or say to avoid? I have, I'm in the process of redoing my rack, and it's gonna be a little bit of time because we're about to have a baby, and that's gonna take a bit of time. And I'm also waiting on, mainly because I'm waiting on the Behringer wing rack to come into stock so that I can do an audio overhaul of the rack. And so I've got a bunch of things. So this is not the, which one is it? Air 3. I think if I go, this is the rack over here at the moment. So there's a bunch of things that are sitting on top that, like Blackmagic bidirectional converters that I've just kept on adding things in. So I've got, I think I've got like 3 or 4 bidirectionals in the rack, and I've got another 3 outside, and I need more because I have cameras like, like this sort of side angle that I've got over here, or the Apple TV, like that kind of stuff that I just want to have. I've got more inputs on the Constellation, but I'm also vaguely weighing up a transitioning to 4K and just thinking through some of that. So I'm possibly going to get, if I do buy new bidirectional converters, I'll probably be the 12G ones. Haven't any problem with the Blackmagic ones. I'm also thinking about getting a decimator because my teleprompter here, I want to do a bit of an overhaul, and I need to sort of flip the video image, which I had, I think it was over here. So I've just got like a smaller screen in, oh, it's my finger, in the teleprompter, and so I want a larger screen, and some of the screens I'm looking at don't have the flipping in them, and so that's where I might get a decimator. What do we got? What else do we have? Have you ever used non-Stream Deck surfaces? I just ordered a Loupedeck to play with. Have not. What have I used? In terms of actual hardware, no. Elgato's been kind enough to send me a bunch of new stuff to play with. So I'm, hopefully in the next couple of weeks I'll be able to go over that. Where's my desk here? So I've got like a Stream Deck Studio that's going to go in the rack once that gets like built again. They sent me a Stream Deck Plus, so I'm still sort of playing around with that form factor and the rotaries there, which is a little difficult when like everything is really built around the 32 button Stream Deck XL. So I've got like 4 different XLs, but I actually use like these things a lot. Like, so this is my, advancing the show queue and then cutting back to the screen view. That's kind of how I was like running the whole show today, which is nice and handy as a little, wireless remote. And then I've got the pedal down here, the Stream Deck pedal. I'm trying to think what else I've got. Oh, they also sent me I can bring it over. The teleprompter, this one. Let me just see if I can zoom in. Which I love. I'm looking forward to doing a video on this one. Where'd the camera go? I think it's there. Because it's an amazing piece of equipment for like 280 bucks. Great for, it's not particularly new, but great for content creators. And it's just like light enough that I can actually put it onto a DSLR. So I've got, again, if I cut to my Air 3 over here, if I come over here, so this is my camera I was about to rig for a shoot, but it just, this kind of just can actually sit on the front of the lens without it being too much of a weight on it, which is often the problem. And what else we got? Yeah, but I haven't tried those other ones. The ones that I'm curious to try is like, if they want to send it to me, I don't really want to buy it because I don't need it. But it's funny because once you start using something, then you're like, this is really neat. Like the Elgato teleprompter, I was like, this is actually really neat. The one that, so these are the surfaces here. Where is it? The 203 Systems Mistrix. That looks kind of interesting. I reckon that's pretty, that could be fun. Where are we? Under Google. Under images, this kind of thing. It just, could be a lot of fun little buttons to play with, but no, I haven't. Long and short of it is I haven't. Blackmagic ATEM micro panel, I don't think I would play with that because I just really like the customization of Stream Decks. What else have we got? But I would say like Companion Satellite has been really amazing too. It's just, it opens up a whole new workflow so that my Companion is running in the rack and then my main computer, is running running ScreenDeck as well as Companion Satellite. So many different names. Okay. Jesse says, I'm so excited that you can now pick and choose the Companion module versions. Yeah, so I was tossing up whether on today's show whether to look at the beta, but I thought for an intro, it was pretty in depth for an intro. But for an intro, we'll sort of stick to what the stable version is. But what he's referring to in the betas that are coming up, so version 4 onwards, you are able to install the particular version for each module so that the core of Companion is sort of separated in its upgrade path to the actual modules. So it means that you could be running the same version of Companion and maybe there's a small change that was made to Canon PTZs, which enables a feature, and rather than waiting for that to come out through the whole, like into the stable version of Companion over a couple of months maybe, you can immediately just update that one module. So that's going to be really powerful and probably more stable too. More presets to the module. Presets. No, I haven't. Christian Sass, this guy's my favorite video hacker. Glad to have you here. Do you use NDI in your setup? Great question. I do actually. And for example, like this little camera here is running NDI. So this is the OBSBot Tail Air, which they sent to me last year sometime, and I made a couple of videos on this. And I've been able to build it into my workflow, and it's running NDI. I will say I've noticed with these connections, like, so on the back they run a micro HDMI out, and they sent me 3 cameras, and of 2 of them, the HDMI connections failed on them, which is really annoying because like the camera itself is still working fine. But what I've been able to do is, rather than running it over HDMI, which I still have one, where do I have that? Do I have one connected? I don't. So I have one like not turned on up in the rig, and then I have one connected over here, but not routed through. Again, this is why I need more converters, because I have inputs available, but I don't have HDMI to SDI converters. And I'm weighing up whether to go 12G or just buy the cheaper 3G. So this Tail Air is running NDI, so it's connected over Wi-Fi to my router. And then I have a Magwell decoder, which happens to be a HDMI version. So it's decoding it to HDMI and then converting it back to SDI to bring it into the system. And that's what I was doing before in terms of this mobile camera, to kind of sort of show you around the studio. And this was the other camera that we have up here that I don't know, it just died, the HDMI. It's funny because I didn't even like, I didn't even move it. It just kind of died one day. And then the other one that I've got set up here sometimes when I don't have the R5C plugged in is back here, which is a alternate view. I don't know if you can see that, but, and then I have this one that I just sort of keep roaming in case I need to like get under the desk. So that's kind of how I've been using NDI. There was one point where I was running NDI for the Canon PTZ camera, which is up in the rig for the overhead shot, which is kind of handy because then you can just run one Ethernet cable for power because it's PoE, you know, controlling it, and also the video signal. But you know, there's a bit of compression and a little bit of latency, so you know, it's not a short run. Sorry, it's not a long run. So I've just gone SCI from the rig into there for that. But it could do NDI if I want, but I've given it to the other camera. And Christian says, Stream Deck Studio is out of my price range. Yeah, they're $900 for the Stream Deck Studios. They're aimed at a broadcast professional market who the comparative like devices are more than that. So I think they're still probably priced well for the market they're reaching, but for essentially the same number of buttons as you would have on a Stream Deck XL, it's a huge jump from like $250 up to $900. I will say the amazing thing about the Stream Deck Studio is it basically becomes a companion satellite in its own. So in today's presentation where I was talking about running companion satellite on a computer, that is then the Stream Deck is connected via USB to the computer, and then over the network is talking to Companion. This is doing all that in the device, so you can actually just hook up one PoE straight into a switch, and then you don't have to have a whole computer on a workstation to run that. So that's kind of why that's a little more expensive and more powerful for a distributed workflow. But they have released, or they've shown a device, which I believe is going to be under $100 maybe, which is basically the PoE part of the Stream Deck Studio. So it's PoE into a little converter box that will sit within the Stream Deck XL space in here. So you can have an Ethernet to here, and it will convert it to USB. So you can have one cable to basically run a Stream Deck Studio over the network without having to plug in additional power and stuff. So that's definitely a route to go. That's much cheaper. And then there's other websites. I'm trying to remember this. I can't remember the name of it, but there are. I can't remember. There's a name of it. There's a guy who makes rack mounts. So you could essentially, using the PoE connector that I was talking about, get one of those and mount an XL or other things into a rack using a sort of more cheaply modified thing. And so then maybe for several $100 rather than close to $1,000, you could have a rack mounted Stream Deck solution. So yeah, hopefully that will help. All right, I think that's all about that we've got. So I should probably just say goodbye, and hopefully that gave you a good overview of where Companion is up to in 2025. If you want to see more, go to my website, davidjoshuaford.com, to get further tips and how to install it. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments and we can answer those after the show. And I look forward to showing you more about Companion over the next couple of months, throughout 2025, because there's always new things and amazing updates that are coming into Companion. Until next week, take care, and I'll see you then.